I'm standing in a hospital room at 3 in the morning, watching a man I thought I knew die in front of me. And all I can think about is the text message on his phone that started this nightmare exactly 6 months ago. The text from my sister. The one that said, "I'm pregnant. It's yours." But let me go back to the beginning. To the night. Everything I believed was a lie. My name is Catherine Reed, and I'm 52 years old. For 25 years, I built a successful event planning business in Charleston, South Carolina. Weddings mostly. Beautiful, romantic celebrations where two people promise forever to each other. I believed in those promises. I lived for them. My husband, Michael, and I were that couple everyone envied. High school sweethearts who actually made it. 25 years of marriage and we still hold hands at dinner. Still kiss goodbye every morning. Still celebrated every anniversary like it was our first date. Or so I thought. Our 25th anniversary was approaching. The silver anniversary. I'd been planning something special for months. A renewal of our vows at the same church where we married. Followed by an intimate dinner at the restaurant where Michael first told me he loved me. I'd even splurged on a custom silver bracelet engraved with our wedding date, and the words, "Forever starts now." Michael seemed distracted in the weeks leading up to the anniversary, but I assumed he was planning his own surprise. That's how naive I was. How blind. The morning of our anniversary, I woke up early to make Michael his favorite breakfast. Blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, thick-cut bacon, and fresh squeezed orange juice. I set the table with our wedding china, put flowers in a vase, and even lit candles. Michael came downstairs in his suit, already looking at his phone. "Happy anniversary, baby," I said, wrapping my arms around him from behind. He stiffened. Actually stiffened in my arms. "Yeah. Happy anniversary." His voice was flat. Emotionless. "I made your favorite." "I can't. I have an early meeting. I'll grab something at the office." "But it's our anniversary. I thought we could at least have breakfast together." "Catherine," I said, "I have a meeting. Can you please not make everything into a production?" The words hit me like a slap. In 25 years, Michael had never spoken to me that way. "I'm sorry. I just thought. You always think. That's the problem. You plan everything to death. You never just let things be." He grabbed his briefcase and walked out, leaving me standing in our kitchen surrounded by pancakes and candles, and the ruins of my perfect anniversary morning. I told myself he was stressed about work. Michael was a financial advisor, and tax season had been brutal. He'd been working late, coming home exhausted, barely talking. But that was temporary. Once things calmed down, we'd get back to normal. I spent the day preparing for our evening celebration. I'd arranged everything at the restaurant. His favorite wine, a special menu, a violinist to play our wedding song. I'd invited no one else. Just us, the way it had always been. At 6 o'clock, I put on the dress I'd bought special for the occasion. Blue silk, Michael's favorite color. I did my hair, my makeup, spritzed his favorite perfume. I looked in the mirror and saw a 52-year-old woman desperately trying to recapture 25. Michael came home at 6:30. I heard his car in the driveway, heard the front door open. "Michael? I'm ready whenever you are. Our reservation is at 7:30, so we have plenty of." He walked into the bedroom, and my voice died. His face was gray. His hands were shaking. And he was holding his phone like it was a bomb about to detonate. "We need to talk." Those 4 words. The 4 words that destroy everything. "Okay. Let me just grab my purse, and we can talk in the car." "We're not going to dinner." "What?" "But I made reservations, and they're holding that special table by the—" "Catherine, sit down." I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd shared for 25 years, and watched my husband's face crumble. "I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what?" "This. Us. The marriage. I can't pretend anymore." The room started spinning. "Pretend? What are you talking about?" "Michael, if you're upset about this morning, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. I'm in love with someone else." Time stopped. "What?" "I've been seeing someone for the past year. It started as just, we were working together on a project, and things happened. I tried to stop it, I swear I did, but..." "Who?" It doesn't matter who. Ooh. He closed his eyes. Stephanie. My sister's name hit me like a physical blow. No. No, that's not, you're lying. Stephanie wouldn't. She's pregnant. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process the words coming out of my husband's mouth. Stephanie is pregnant. With my child. And I'm leaving you to be with her. I stood up, stumbled, grabbed the bedpost to keep from falling. This is a joke. Some sick anniversary joke. It's not a joke. I'm sorry, Catherine. I never meant for it to happen like this. But I have to do what's right. She's carrying my baby. I'm your wife. And I haven't been happy in years. You're so busy planning everyone else's perfect life that you never noticed mine was falling apart. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about seating charts or centerpieces, or whether the napkins should be ivory or cream? You turned our marriage into another one of your events to manage. I was building a business. Our business. Everything I did was for us. No, Catherine. Everything you did was for you. To prove you were successful. To prove you were in control. But you can't control love. And I don't love you anymore. He walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase I didn't know he'd packed. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. Divorce? Michael, please, we can work through this. We can go to counseling, we can. I'm going to be a father. I have to think about my child now. And what about me? What about our 25 years? He looked at me then, and his eyes were empty. I'm sorry those years weren't enough. He left. Just walked out of our bedroom, down the stairs, out the front door. I heard his car start. Heard it drive away. And I stood there in my blue silk dress and my carefully applied makeup, surrounded by the wreckage of my perfect anniversary. I called Stephanie. Of course I called her. My baby sister. The one I'd helped raise after our parents died. The one I'd put through college. The one I'd given a job at my company when she couldn't find work anywhere else. She answered on the third ring. Catherine, I can't talk right now. Is it true? Silence. Stephanie, is it true? Are you pregnant with my husband's baby? I didn't mean for it to happen. I started laughing. Hysterical, broken laughter that turned into sobs. You didn't mean for it to happen? How do you accidentally sleep with your sister's husband? How do you accidentally get pregnant? I love him, Catherine. I'm sorry, but I do. We tried to fight it, but... We? There is no we between you and my husband. He's not happy with you. He hasn't been for years. He told me. He told you lies. He told you whatever he needed to say to get you into bed. That's not true. What we have is real. And now we're having a baby, and we're going to be a family. I'm sorry you're hurt, but you need to accept this and move on. Move on? You stole my husband. I didn't steal anything. He chose me. Maybe if you'd been a better wife. I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word. The next 3 months were hell. Michael moved in with Stephanie into an apartment downtown. My lawyer told me South Carolina doesn't have alienation of affection laws, so I couldn't sue her for breaking up my marriage. Michael's lawyer demanded a 50-50 split of everything, including my business. My business. The one I'd built from nothing while Michael worked a safe corporate job. But because we were married when I started it, he was entitled to half. I had to sell the house to pay him out. Had to liquidate retirement accounts. Had to watch my life's work get carved up and distributed to the man who destroyed me. My clients started canceling. Word got around about the divorce. And apparently no one wants their wedding planned by someone whose own marriage imploded. My revenue dropped 70% in 2 months. I couldn't pay my assistant anymore. Couldn't afford the office space. I moved everything to a spare bedroom in the small apartment I'd rented after selling the house. 6 months after my husband left me on our anniversary, I was 52 years old, divorced, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and running a failing business from my bedroom. And then Caroline Westfield called. I almost didn't answer. I'd been screening calls, avoiding anyone who might want to offer sympathy or worse, gossip. But the number was local but unfamiliar, and I needed work desperately, so I picked up. Catherine Reed speaking. Ms. Reed, my name is Caroline Westfield. I'm looking for someone to plan my wedding. A client. An actual client. I'd be happy to discuss that with you. When is your wedding date? 6 months from now. I know that's short notice. Not at all. I can absolutely make that timeline work. Would you like to set up a consultation? Actually, I was hoping we could meet today. I'm in a somewhat unusual situation, and I need someone who can be discreet. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near downtown. When I arrived, I spotted her immediately. Caroline Westfield was striking, early 40s, dark hair, elegant even in jeans and a sweater. But it was the teenage girl sitting next to her that made me pause. The girl was maybe 16, with the same dark hair as Caroline, but eyes that burned with unmistakable hostility. Ms. Reed, thank you for meeting us. This is my daughter Harper. Harper didn't acknowledge me. She was too busy glaring at her mother. Harper will be my maid of honor, so I wanted her to be part of the planning process. I'm not being your maid of honor, Harper said flatly. I'm not even coming to your wedding. Caroline's face tightened, but she kept her voice calm. Harper, we discussed this. You discussed it. I told you this whole thing is a mistake, and you don't care. The girl stood up and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me and Caroline in awkward silence. I'm sorry about that, Caroline said finally. Harper is struggling with my engagement. How long has her father been gone? I asked gently. Caroline looked at me sharply. How did you know? I've been planning weddings for 25 years. I can spot a grieving teenager. She nodded slowly. My husband David died 3 years ago. Car accident. He was driving home from work, and a drunk driver crossed the center line. He died at the scene. I'm so sorry. Harper was 13. She and David were incredibly close. His death nearly destroyed her. And now, Caroline took a shaky breath. I've met someone. Thomas Westfield. We've been dating for a year, and he asked me to marry him. But Harper can't accept it. She thinks I'm replacing her father. Are you taking his name? Actually, Thomas is taking mine. Westfield was David's family name. I kept it after he died because I wanted Harper to have that connection. Thomas offered to change his name so we could all be Westfields together. That was unusual. And generous. Tell me about Thomas. Caroline's face softened. He's a widower. His wife Sarah died of cancer 5 years ago. He understands grief. He understands loss. He never tries to replace David or be Harper's new father. He just wants to be part of our family. Does Harper know that? I've tried to tell her, but she won't listen. She barely speaks to Thomas. Won't be in the same room with him if she can help it. I'm terrified she's going to do something to sabotage the wedding. I understood fear. I understood betrayal. And I understood desperate mothers who do anything to protect their children. I'll plan your wedding, I said. But I have one condition. Name it. I work with Harper too. She's clearly hurting, and a wedding is going to magnify that pain. If you want this day to go smoothly, we need to help her process what's happening. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I don't know how to reach her anymore. We agreed on my fee, which was substantially more than my usual rate. Caroline didn't even flinch. She signed the contract and wrote me a check for the full amount on the spot. I should have been thrilled. This was the kind of high-end wedding that could resurrect my business. But as I walked back to my car, all I could think about was Harper's angry eyes and the echo of my sister's words. Maybe if you'd been a better wife. I started meeting with Caroline weekly to plan the wedding. She wanted something elegant but intimate. 75 guests at a historic estate, dinner under string lights in the garden, a small orchestra for dancing. She wanted everything perfect. Just like I used to. Harper came to exactly one planning meeting. She sat in the corner, arms crossed, radiating hostility as Caroline and I discussed flower arrangements and menu options. What do you think, Harper? I asked, trying to include her. The roses or the peonies? I think this whole wedding is a joke, and my dad would be ashamed of both of you. Caroline went pale. Harper, that's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would be Dad still being alive. Fair would be you not trying to replace him 6 months after his death. It's been 3 years. 6 months. You started dating Thomas 6 months after Dad died. The room went silent. You were dating Thomas 2.5 years ago? I asked carefully. Caroline's face was scarlet. Harper, we've been through this. Thomas and I met at a grief support group. We were friends first, helping each other cope. Friends don't get engaged. Friends don't plan weddings. You're marrying him, and Dad's barely cold in the ground. Harper stormed out again. Caroline started crying. I loved David. I loved him with everything I had. But he's gone and I'm still here, and I deserve to be happy again. Don't I deserve that? Of course you do, I said automatically. But something about the timeline bothered me. 6 months after her husband died, she was dating someone new. A year later, they were engaged. I knew grief. I knew loss. And I knew from my own divorce that healing doesn't follow a schedule. But there was something Caroline wasn't telling me. I could feel it. I started working on Harper separately. I'd text her, nothing pushy, just checking in. Eventually, she agreed to meet me for coffee. Why are you doing this? She asked suspiciously. Why do you care? Because I know what it's like to have your life fall apart. 6 months ago, my husband left me for my sister on our 25th anniversary. She's pregnant with his baby. So I understand betrayal. And I understand grief. And I understand feeling like the people who are supposed to love you are lying to your face. Harper's eyes widened. Your sister? That's messed up. Yeah, it is. And I'm still figuring out how to process it. But here's what I've learned. Anger is easier than grief. It's cleaner. More empowering. When you're angry, you feel like you have control. But grief? Grief makes you helpless. I'm not helpless. I didn't say you were. But Harper, your mom isn't your enemy. She's grieving too in her own way. She's marrying someone else. How is that grieving? Maybe she's trying to fill the empty space your dad left. Maybe she's scared of being alone. Maybe she genuinely loves Thomas. People are complicated. Or maybe she never really loved my dad at all. The words hung in the air between us. Do you really believe that? I asked quietly. Harper looked away. I don't know what I believe anymore. Over the next few weeks, I got to know Harper better. She was smart, talented, and desperately sad. She showed me pictures of her dad, a kind-faced man with Harper's eyes, always with his arm around his daughter. We used to go hiking every weekend, Harper said, scrolling through photos. He'd packed this ridiculous backpack with way too much food, and we'd just walk and talk. He was my best friend. That's a beautiful gift. And Mom wants to throw it away. I don't think that's what she wants. I think she's trying to figure out how to live in a world where your dad doesn't exist anymore. That's not the same as forgetting him. Then why is she marrying someone else? Why isn't Dad enough? Because dead people can't hold your hand at night. They can't make you laugh or kiss your forehead or tell you everything will be okay. Your mom isn't replacing your dad. She's trying to survive losing him. Harper started crying then, deep, gut-wrenching sobs. I held her while she fell apart. This grieving girl who missed her father so much she couldn't see her mother's pain. I met Thomas for the first time 3 weeks before the wedding. Caroline invited me to their house for dinner to finalize details, and he was there. Thomas Westfield was handsome in a quiet way. Salt and pepper hair, gentle eyes, the kind of man who'd open doors and remember birthdays. He was polite, attentive to Caroline, and clearly trying hard to stay out of my way. Caroline speaks very highly of you, he said, offering me a glass of wine. She's a wonderful client. You're a lucky man. I know I am. He glanced at Caroline with such genuine affection that I felt a pang of jealousy. Michael used to look at me like that. Before Stephanie. Harper came home halfway through dinner. She'd been at a friend's house, but when she saw Thomas, her face hardened. I didn't know he'd be here. Harper, this is Thomas's house too, Caroline said gently. No, it's not. This is Dad's house. You just let this stranger move in. Harper. But she was already gone, thundering up the stairs to her room. Thomas sighed. She hates me. She doesn't hate you, Caroline said. She hates the situation. She hates me. And I can't blame her. If I were 16, and someone was trying to replace my dad, I'd hate them too. You're not trying to replace anyone, Caroline insisted. But the doubt in Thomas's eyes suggested he wasn't so sure. I left shortly after, but as I was putting on my coat, Harper appeared at the top of the stairs. Can I talk to you? We went outside, standing in the driveway under the stars. I found something, Harper said. Something about my dad's accident. What do you mean? The police report. I found it in Mom's filing cabinet. I wasn't snooping, I wanted to see it. To understand what happened. Okay. The drunk driver? The one who crossed the center line and killed my dad. What about him? It was a her. And her name was Sarah Westfield. The world tilted. Thomas's wife? Harper nodded. She was drunk. She killed my dad. And 6 months later, my mom is dating her widower. Don't you think that's weird? Harper, that could be a coincidence. Westfield is a common name. I looked her up. Sarah Westfield died 5 years ago in the same accident that killed David Westfield. Only she didn't die in the accident. She died 3 days later in the hospital. From injuries sustained when she crashed into my father's car. I felt sick. Does your mom know you know this? I confronted her yesterday. She said it was fate. That she and Thomas were brought together by tragedy. And their love was healing their shared grief. But Catherine, it's not fate. It's insane. His wife killed my dad and now they're getting married. What did your mom say when you told her how you felt? She said I was too young to understand. That grief and forgiveness are complicated. That Thomas didn't kill my dad, and he's spent 5 years dealing with the guilt of what his wife did. And how do you feel about that? I feel like my mom is losing her mind. I feel like this man is manipulating her. I feel like I'm going crazy. I hugged her then, this girl who'd had her father stolen by a drunk driver, and was now watching her mother marry the drunk driver's husband. And I wondered what the hell kind of wedding I'd agreed to plan. I confronted Caroline the next day. Harper told me about the accident. Caroline's face went white. She shouldn't have. Why didn't you tell me? Because it doesn't matter. Sarah's accident had nothing to do with Thomas. He's a victim in this too. His wife killed your husband. His wife made a terrible mistake. She'd just gotten a terminal cancer diagnosis. She was devastated. She went to a bar, had too much to drink, and got behind the wheel. What happened was tragic, but it wasn't malicious. And you're okay marrying the husband of the woman who killed the father of your child? Thomas and I understand each other in ways no one else can. We've both lost spouses. We've both felt that impossible grief. Yes, the circumstances are unusual, but unusual? Caroline, it's disturbing. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like two people so desperate not to be alone that they've convinced themselves a tragedy is a love story. Caroline started crying. After David died, I wanted to die too. Every morning I woke up and remembered he was gone. And I wanted to stop breathing. The only reason I didn't kill myself was Harper. I had to survive for her. But I was barely surviving. So you met Thomas at a grief support group? No. I met him at the hospital. 3 days after the accident. He was there saying goodbye to Sarah. And I was there waiting while the doctors tried to save David. We were in the same waiting room. And when Sarah died and David died, we were the only two people in that room who understood what the other was losing. Oh my God. We started talking. Just talking. About grief and guilt and how impossible it all was. He told me Sarah had been sick, that she'd been drinking more to cope with the diagnosis. He blamed himself for not seeing how bad it had gotten. And I told him about David, about how we'd argued that morning about something stupid, and how my last words to him were angry. Caroline. Thomas was the only person who didn't tell me everything happens for a reason, or that time heals all wounds, or any of that useless bullshit people say when someone dies. He just sat with me in my grief. And eventually, that grief turned into something else. Something gentler. Something that felt like hope. And Harper. Harper doesn't understand. She's 16. She thinks love is simple and grief has an expiration date. But I'm 44 years old, and I've buried my husband, and I deserve to be happy again. Even if that happiness is complicated. I didn't know what to say. Part of me understood. Part of me thought Caroline was making a terrible mistake. And part of me wondered if I was projecting my own failed marriage onto hers. 2 weeks before the wedding, Harper disappeared. Caroline called me at midnight, hysterical. She's not answering her phone. Her car is gone. I don't know where she is. I'm coming over. I drove to Caroline's house, where she and Thomas were both in full panic mode. Thomas was calling Harper's friends. Caroline was calling hospitals. When did you last see her? I asked. Dinner. We had another fight about the wedding. She said she wasn't coming, and I said she was being selfish. And she said I was choosing a man over my daughter, and I said that wasn't fair. Okay, where would she go? Somewhere that reminds her of her dad. Caroline's face cleared. The hiking trail. The one she and David used to go to every weekend. We drove to the trailhead. Sure enough, Harper's car was in the parking lot. Thomas stayed with the cars while Caroline and I hiked up the trail, calling Harper's name. We found her at the top, sitting on a rock overlooking the valley. She was crying. Go away. Harper. I said go away. You don't get it. You don't understand. Then help me understand, Caroline said, sitting down next to her daughter. I come here because it's the only place I still feel close to Dad. When I'm here, I can hear his voice. I can remember what it felt like when he was alive. And you're taking that away from me. How am I taking it away? Because you're moving on. You're getting married and starting a new life. And soon Dad will just be this person you used to be married to. You'll forget him. Harper, I will never forget your father. He was the love of my life. He gave me you. He made me laugh and challenged me and supported my dreams. I carry him with me every single day. Then why are you marrying someone else? Because your dad is dead. And I'm not. And I have to figure out how to live in a world without him. That doesn't mean I love him less. It means I love myself enough to keep living. What about me? Don't I get a say? Of course you do. And I've heard you. I know you're hurt. I know this is hard. But Harper, I need you to hear me too. I need you to understand that my happiness doesn't erase your grief. Thomas isn't replacing your dad. He's someone who makes me laugh again. Who makes me feel less alone. Is that really so terrible? Harper was sobbing now. I miss him so much. I know, baby. I miss him too. They held each other on that rock while I stood a few feet away, trying not to cry myself. I don't think I can watch you marry someone else, Harper whispered. Then don't watch. Just be there. Just stand next to me while I try to figure out how to be happy again. That's all I'm asking. Does he make you happy? He does. Not the same way your dad did. But in a new way. A way that makes me believe life might still hold good things. Harper nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. I'll come to the wedding. I won't promise to be happy about it. But I'll come. Caroline started crying again, holding her daughter like she might disappear. The wedding day arrived. The venue looked perfect. White flowers everywhere, string lights glowing in the garden, the orchestra warming up on the patio. 75 guests milled around, sipping cocktails and admiring the sunset. I'd orchestrated hundreds of weddings. This one should have been routine. But my hands were shaking as I checked my clipboard for the 100th time. Harper appeared in her bridesmaid dress, looking beautiful and sad. You look lovely, I told her. I look like I'm going to a funeral. Are you going to be okay? I don't know. Ask me in 3 hours. The ceremony started. Caroline walked down the aisle to Pachelbel's cannon, looking radiant. Thomas waited at the altar, his eyes filled with tears. The officiant began speaking about love and loss and second chances. And then, right in the middle of the vows, Harper stood up. Wait. Stop. Everyone turned to stare at her. Harper, Caroline began. I'm sorry, but I can't do this. I can't stand here and pretend this is okay. Thomas looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Caroline's face was frozen in horror. Harper, please. No, Mum. You need to hear this. Harper turned to Thomas. Your wife killed my father. Did you know that when you started dating my mom? Gasps from the guests. Caroline tried to stand, but Harper held up her hand. Let me finish. Your wife was drunk. She crossed the center line. She destroyed my family. And you knew that, and you still pursued my mother. Harper, that's not how it happened, Caroline tried. Isn't it? He knew who you were. He knew his wife had killed your husband. And he saw an opportunity. Thomas's face was red. Young lady, I understand you're grieving, but you need to stop. Why? Because you don't want everyone to know the truth? That you and my mom are building your happiness on my dad's grave. Harper Reed, that is enough. Caroline's voice cracked through the garden like a whip. But Harper wasn't done. I went to the hospital. I got the records from the night of the accident. Did you know that, Mom? Did you know I spent weeks piecing together what really happened? What are you talking about? Sarah Westfield didn't die 3 days after the accident. She died that night. The same night as Dad. And Thomas wasn't at the hospital saying goodbye to her. He wasn't even in Charleston. He was in Atlanta on business. He came back 2 days later, after both of them were already dead. The garden was completely silent. Harper, where did you get that information? I asked carefully. Hospital records. Death certificates. Flight records. I did my research. Caroline turned to Thomas. Is this true? Thomas's face had gone gray. Caroline, I can explain. Did you lie to me about being at the hospital? I didn't lie, I wasn't ready to tell you the truth. What truth? Thomas sat down heavily in the nearest chair. Sarah and I were separated. We'd been separated for 6 months before the accident. I was in Atlanta with. He swallowed hard. With another woman. When Sarah got the cancer diagnosis, she called me, told me she needed me, and I told her I was done. That the marriage was over. She was drunk when she got in that car. And I wasn't there to stop her. Caroline stumbled backward like she'd been struck. You told me you were married when she died. We were legally married. Just separated. You told me she was the love of your life. She was. Once. But we'd grown apart. The cancer diagnosis. It broke something between us. She wanted me to come back, to take care of her, and I refused. So yes, I feel responsible for what happened. But Caroline, my feelings for you are real. Everything between us is real. Except it's built on lies. Harper shouted. Harper, that's enough. I stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. But Harper wasn't listening. She was staring at her mother with tears streaming down her face. Do you see what I mean, Mom? This whole thing is wrong. Dad died because of this man's wife, and now you're marrying him, and it's like Dad never even mattered. David always mattered. Caroline was crying now too. But he's gone, Harper. And I'm still here, trying to figure out how to keep breathing. Yes, the situation is complicated. Yes, maybe I should have asked more questions. But I love Thomas. I love him in spite of everything, and I'm allowed to do that. Not if it means betraying Dad's memory. It's not a betrayal to want to be happy again. It is if you're marrying the man whose wife killed him. The argument spiraled. Guests started murmuring, pulling out their phones to record the disaster unfolding in front of them. I was about to intervene when Thomas suddenly stood up. Harper's right. Everyone went silent. What? Caroline whispered. Harper's right. This is wrong. All of it. Thomas looked at Caroline with anguish in his eyes. I do love you. But she's right. My guilt over Sarah's death. Your grief over David's death. We've been using each other to avoid dealing with the real pain. And in doing that, we've hurt the one person who should matter most. Your daughter. Thomas, no. Caroline, I can't marry you. Not like this. Not when Harper is standing here, begging you to see what we've been refusing to acknowledge. That our relationship is built on tragedy, not love. That's not true. Isn't it? We met in a hospital where both our spouses were dying. We bonded over guilt and grief. We rushed into this because we were both terrified of being alone. But that's not the foundation for a marriage. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need to stop. We need to step back. We need to deal with our grief separately before we can build a life together. You're calling off the wedding? I'm saying we need time. Real time. Not 6 months of grief counseling masquerading as dating. Caroline looked like her world was ending. Again. But I love you. I love you too. But Harper loves you more. And she needs you. Not the version of you who's trying to fill the empty space David left. The real you. The mother who shows up for her daughter even when it's hard. Thomas kissed Caroline's forehead, nodded at Harper, and walked away. The garden erupted. Guests whispering, some crying, some laughing nervously. Caroline stood frozen in her wedding dress, looking lost. And Harper? Harper ran to her mother, and held her while they both fell apart. I canceled the reception. Sent the guests home. Packed up the flowers and the cake. And the dreams of a perfect wedding that was never meant to be. Later that evening, I found Caroline sitting alone in the empty garden. I'm sorry, I said, sitting beside her. Don't be. Harper was right. Thomas was right. I was trying to run away from my grief instead of facing it. That's understandable. Is it? Because all I've done is hurt my daughter and waste everyone's time and money. You tried to find happiness. That's not a waste. I betrayed David's memory. No. You tried to survive losing him. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a while, watching the string lights flicker in the darkness. What happened with your husband? Caroline asked. And your sister? Stephanie had a miscarriage 2 weeks ago. Turns out she was never pregnant. She faked it to steal my husband. Caroline turned to stare at me. What? She was taking prenatal vitamins, wearing maternity clothes, showing Michael ultrasound pictures she'd downloaded from the internet. She wanted him, so she created a baby that didn't exist. And by the time he figured it out, he'd already divorced me, moved in with her, and destroyed both of our lives. Oh my God. What did he do? He showed up at my apartment at 3 a.m, sobbing, begging me to take him back, saying he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. And I told him to leave, because I realized something watching you and Harper tonight. I spent 25 years trying to create the perfect marriage, the perfect life, the perfect everything. And in doing that, I stopped being real. I stopped being me. Michael didn't fall in love with Stephanie because she's better than me. He fell in love with her lies because he was tired of my truth. That's not your fault. Maybe not. But I'm done planning other people's perfect moments. I'm done pretending everything can be controlled and managed and made beautiful. Life is messy. Love is complicated. And sometimes the best thing you can do is be honest about how broken you are. Caroline nodded slowly. So what do we do now? You heal. You take care of Harper. You grieve David properly. And maybe someday you figure out if Thomas was the right person at the wrong time or just the wrong person. And you? I'm closing my business. I'm done with weddings. What will you do instead? I smiled. I have no idea. And for the first time in 25 years, that actually sounds perfect. 6 months later, I was working as a freelance writer, telling people's real stories instead of creating fairy tales. Harper was in therapy, slowly healing from her father's death. Caroline was single, focusing on her daughter and her own grief journey. And Thomas? Thomas sent Caroline a letter 3 weeks after the canceled wedding. He'd checked himself into a grief counseling program, finally addressing the guilt and pain he'd been avoiding. He said he'd like to talk to her again someday, when they were both healthier. Caroline hadn't responded yet. But she kept the letter. As for Michael and Stephanie, they were miserable together, apparently. Stephanie got pregnant again, this time for real. But Michael had figured out she was a liar and a manipulator. And he was trapped in a relationship he'd destroyed his life to create. Good. I was sitting in my new apartment, writing an article about second chances, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Catherine Reed. Speaking. Ms. Reed, my name is Julian Harper. I'm getting married in 8 months, and I heard you're the best wedding planner in Charleston. I'm retired from wedding planning. I heard that too. But I also heard you're the only person who tells the truth about love and marriage. And I need someone honest. Because my fiancé and I? We've already been married before. To each other. This is our second chance after an ugly divorce. And we want someone who won't sell us a fairy tale. I smiled. Tell me your story. And just like that, I was back in the business. But this time, I wasn't creating perfect moments. I was helping real people navigate their messy, complicated, beautiful truths. Because that's what love actually is. Not perfect. Not planned. Not controlled. Just two imperfect people choosing each other, again and again. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard.